Today we're going to talk about high-speed steel work. This happened years and years and years ago. I worked in Southern California down in San Diego County, and I worked for a place, and we'll just call it Kahuna Steel. So Kahuna Steel had a big fab shop, and then they had field crews, and I worked part of the time in the shop, and then part of the time I was out in the field hanging iron. So we used to leave early in the morning. We'd go up to South LA, and we might hang a job up in Venice, or we might be hanging a job in Rancho Santa Fe down in San Diego County. So I stayed there for several years. Well, Kahuna Steel was in many respects a pretty good steel company. They had a lot of work. They did a lot of work in the San Diego area. They had one major problem, and that was speed. Probably 80% of the people that worked at Kahuna Steel were on meth. Now, this was back in the day, as I say, mid to late 80s, when the bikers ran the meth industry in San Diego County, and it was readily available. In fact, if you walked across the street to the taco place and were sitting there with your burrito, a biker called Buzzard used to roll in there, and he'd go around and ask if anybody wanted any meth. And so people could get their lunch, and they could get their speed for the afternoon. In fact, actually, at Kahuna Steel, it was so bad in the shop that they had a locker, and people would go and pay their money, and then they would do their line, and then they would go back to work. Well, the problem with that is, first of all, it increases astronomically your potential for accidents. It is an extreme safety hazard. And there were some pretty spectacular accidents as the result of the fact that people weren't right. And they were doing a lot of stuff very, very rapidly, not very well very often. The other problem that we encountered, of course, was quality, because people couldn't concentrate. They couldn't pay attention to what they were doing when they were welding or reading prints or whatever. So consequently, the quality declined at Kahuna Steel dramatically, to the extent that, as I recall, there was one particular contract where they lost $80,000. And it was due to the fact that they had a yard full of energetic young men who were, a good many of whom were on meth. So if you weren't on meth at the time, then you weren't part of the club. But I worked in the department by myself. I certainly was aware of it. We had conversations about it with upper level management. They kind of turned a blind eye to it, frankly. And as a result of that, their business went down and went down and went down until they lost it. And Kahuna Steel had to close. And so that was the end of that. So substance abuse. Now this, we happen to be talking about meth, but substance abuse, just of various stripes and variety, and ironwork does not mix. It will produce astronomically bad accidents. It will produce a decline in quality of work. It is fundamentally dangerous whether you're in the shop or whether you're in the field. So here's the lesson from high-speed steel. Don't engage in this kind of activity and hope to be successful in what you're doing in ironwork. You're going to kill yourself. You're going to kill somebody else. You're going to paralyze somebody, or you're going to end up paralyzed yourself. There's all kinds of problems that arise out of substance abuse and mixing that with ironwork or steel fabrication. So lesson for today. Take a leaf out of the book of Kahuna Steel, learn from that, understand you cannot mix these things together, and for our sake, for our policy here, our policy is that if you're involved in any kind of an incident or for cause, we can test you, and if you do come positive, then there are repercussions that follow that. So just be conscious and be aware that substance abuse is a big problem. If you've got these kind of issues, there's the EAP, the Employee Assistance Program. There's a number of ways to deal with this, getting you into a 12-step program or whatever it is that we need to do to help you curb this or deal with it. But realize that substance abuse and iron work do not mix. And so that's the Roo Tale for today. I hope you take it to heart. And if this is a problem for you, talk to somebody. Let's get it squared away. I don't think that it is at this point, but there's always places in industry where it can creep in. So just be aware of the potential that we all have for getting ourselves into trouble, and take it to heart, and let's run clean sites and do a good job and continue to succeed at our chosen profession.